of Operation Gladio meets Secret Societies with Warhamster Brady. How are you today, Warhamster?
I am doing fantastic and looking forward to this.
Me too.
We are going to try to wrap up about 30 weeks worth of Skull and Bones meets Secret Societies meets Operation Gladio, what have you, all in one or two shows. There's a lot to get to. We started this giving a pretty big overview, and I'm going to present a lot of the same information we've gone through, doing it from a different angle, and kind of hammer home some of the themes that we've been doing. I think this is going to be good. We're definitely not getting it done in one show. I can promise you that. So taking a step back, we originally looked into secret societies, and Skull and Bones was the first one. And we started doing this because, as everyone knows, the Colonel has, probably become one of the world's leading experts on Operation Gladio. And to put words in your own mouth, I'll have you put words in your own mouth. Exactly what is Operation Gladio, and how does that tie into, the whole geopolitical strategy? I'll let you go ahead and do that because.
Well, I think, and this series has definitely helped me kind of consolidate what my suspicions were all along. And the best way to sum it up is that prior to World War II, you had these oligarchs that controlled everything, but paid for their exploitation of countries out of their own bottom line. And World War II brought a change in that, where they set up international institutions like the IMF and the World Bank and the UN, and offshored that expense onto the taxpayers around the world, because collectively all of the countries created their own intelligence apparatus and began carrying at taxpayers' expense their own large military bodies. And the CIA and the standing military, in very few exceptions, never conducted another single war based on anything other than the oligarchs' need to exploit a country. And I think I demonstrated that ad nauseum at this point. But there was another phase of that later on, where in the 90s, the apparatus that they had set up in the CIA and military began contracting out a lot of that capability. And eventually all of those private contractors got bought up by the same corporations and oligarchs. So not only did they offshore the expense off of their books, it's now a profit center for them. They are reaping the rewards through the military-industrial complex and the outsourcing of intelligence and private militaries, all of which they have now either bought lock, stock, and barrel. And we just illustrated that again last night on the Alpha Warrior show with the PCCI company being bought up by Brown and Root. And so with none other than George H.W. Bush, the first president of this organization. So that to me, and of course, Operation Gladio comes into play because after World War II, these stay-behind paramilitary units were the boots on the ground to orchestrate the regime change for any country that dared to say they were going to remain neutral or they were not going to allow their resources to be exploited. They would just overthrow the government, not unlike what we're seeing right now with Trump. So, this series is definitely firmly concreted that cycle for everyone, I think.
What you're describing is a global apparatus to control everyone from many different angles. You've got to control the governments. You've got to, have the business contracts. You've got to have a diplomatic. You've got to have the subterfuge intelligence. You've got to have the military. And what we're describing, this shadow state, it exists. And we've kind of proven it. We went into this series saying, okay, Skull and Bones, if we look at it objectively, this is either a group of a fraternal organization that's nothing more than a networking opportunity of, a lot of people who went to Ivy League schools, etc., or is there something more sinister? And so the question you got to ask yourselves, if you were to build a multinational operation where you're able to exploit the resources and the labor of countries all over the world, topple their governments, run the corporations, run the NGOs, would you do things anything differently than they've done it? And you put your people in this key strategic stranglehold points, choke points, to influence every aspect of government society. And that's what they've done. I want to read a quick couple of paragraphs from a wonderful book I've talked about before. It's called Superclass by David Rothkopf. He worked with Kissinger and some other people, so he's been in the room with some pretty big things. He knows what he's talking about. He's discussing a book called The Power Elite, 1956 book by a guy by the name of C. Wright Mills. Mills is a former Columbia professor of sociology. He wrote the book as a study of how America really worked. His central claim was that at the top tier of the business, government, and military communities, there was a remarkably small and overlapping echelon of, in quotes, deciders. This national power elite was, and this is quoting straight from the book, composed of men whose positions enable them to transcend the ordinary environments of ordinary men and women. They are in positions to make decisions having major consequences. They are in command of the major hierarchies and organizations of modern society. They rule the big corporations. They run the machinery of the state and claim its prerogatives. They direct the military establishment. They occupy the strategic command posts of the social structure in which are now centered the effective means of the power and the wealth of the celebrity which they enjoy. It's written in 1956. He got it right.
He definitely got it right.
He just didn't name Skull and Bones. But we're going to. So who is Skull and Bones? Yale University. Well, let's go to the beginning here. Yale University is founded in 1701. It's the third oldest college. It was founded on Orthodox Puritanism. Orthodox Puritanism believed in concepts like total depravity or original sin, and also unconditional election, which is also known as predestination. Other secret societies they had there at Yale were Scroll and Key and Wolf's Head. It is founded in 1834. I got that one wrong. They also call themselves the Order, or Chapter 322, which is a German secret society. So it's founded in 1833 by a guy by the name of General Russell and Alphonso Taft, we talked about a little bit before. Alphonso Taft, of course, is the father of future President Taft. So they take 15 members every year. And this is from the writings of Anthony Sutton. He said at any time only 25% are active in the world. He says about 25 to 30 families have come to dominate. You have the old line families from the 1600s and also the new money. And that's people like the Whitneys, the Whitworths, the Bundys, and the Lords. The new money are people like the Harrimans, the Rockefellers, the Paynes, the Davisons. These are the robber barons, and they merged. I wanted to read one other quote from Sutton. The evolution of American society is not, and has not been for a century, a voluntary development reflecting independent individual ideas and decisions at the grassroots. On the contrary, the broad direction has been created artificially and stimulated by the order. He wrote a number of these things called, in his memorandums, memorandum number 6 called Modus Operandi, and here's a quote from Sutton again. And this is the theme you and I have hit home over and over. Left and right are artificial devices to bring about change. and the extremes of political left and right are vital elements in a process of controlled change. The answer to the seeming political puzzle lies in Hegelian philosophy. Basically, divide and conquer.
Yeah, to implement your third way.
Exactly. And again, this is written 30, 40 years ago. We're not making up anything new. Let me just scroll down here. That's what I need to get to. So, I think it's time to share a screen. I've been putting this together in a mirror board. It's never going to be complete. Can you see that?
Nope.
Should be up on screen.
It's not on the side.
Look down below.
I am.
Right below you, on the bottom left-hand side, bottom corner, scroll down.
Oh, there you go.
Yep. Should be able to just add it to stage.
It won't let me. Hold on. Why won't it let me?
I will keep talking while you try to do that.
Okay.
One of the themes we hit over and over again is an awful lot of the bonesmen were involved in smuggling opium for the most part. There we go. And as you notice, the skull and bones insignia, of course, is the pirate's flag. The 322 is from that German secret society that they used 322. Got a picture here of the crypt on Yale's campus. And like I said, no one's really been inside. We're not going to get into the occult side of this stuff because I think not a whole lot of it's provable or documentable. But there's a lot of stories about the crypt and what their rituals are, what they're all about. What is it that they have to keep the order so tight so nobody spills the beans? Is it sexual depravity, blackmail, other satanic rituals? We don't know. There's a lot of speculation, but we can't really talk about things we do not know. And then, of course, there's the great quote from Woodrow Wilson. There is a power somewhere so organized, so subtle, so watchful, so interlocked, so complete, so pervasive, that they had better not speak above their breath when they speak in condemnation of it. That's the President of the United States.
Well, and that's similar to the statement that John F. Kennedy made about the secret societies.
Very much so. And there's a few other quotes like that throughout the ages. And so they knew it was there. All right. Oops, I don't want to do that yet. Still learning how to use this. Okay, so if you wanted to create this great secret society, you'd want to put people in positions of the government, from the president to the Senate to Congress. You would want to capture the diplomatic corps, the Secretary of State, CIA, the military. You'd want to put people in the heads of corporations, NGOs, the institutions, education, religion, and Skull and Bones has done all of the above. So I'm just going to go through each of these major areas. First, we have our presidents of the United States. And the first bonesman we had was William Howard Taft, President of the United States. Right at the turn of the century, was basically the first progressive president. You see, Taft gets I don't know. I hear the mainstream history does not talk about Taft correctly. He did a few good things, but bottom line is, he was there right at the ushering in some of the biggest changes in our country and in the world. He's also, of course, the son of the founder of Skull and Bones, and there would be multiple other Tafts that were in Skull and Bones. So this is it. These guys are very founding. He is also the only man in history to be both the President of the United States and to sit on the Supreme Court. It's pretty impressive.
Very.
Next person we have, of course, is George H.W. Bush. Well, he's a bonesman, also former director of the CIA, vice president under Ronald Reagan, where Reagan once said he had more influence over foreign policy than any vice president in history. It just happens to be at the same time something called, how do I draw a blank on that? Iran-Contra scandal is going on.
Yep.
Which, of course, is where a guy by the name of Jeffrey Epstein got his start, because he was basically helping move money from Adnan Khashoggi. And, of course, the same Bill Barr that covered up Iran-Contra when he became the Attorney General, was also the Attorney General when Epstein got killed, but no coincidences. All right. And then, of course, his son, George W. Bush, is also a bonesman. Never met a war he didn't want to start. And we've got into detail of all three of these people, so we're going to do a high-level overview today. Jump in with anything you want to add, and because the pattern's going to start making a ton of sense.
Well, I think just if you want to posit those three, you go back to Taft. He's president when a lot of the pre-World War II regime change activity is occurring. And, of course, we know George H.W. Bush was involved as the vice president, as we just articulated, in Nicaragua with the Contras and many of the Latin America destabilization efforts. He goes on and, of course, oversees Desert Storm 1 under a false pretense as well. And then, of course, you have his son that oversaw 9/11. And none of that is a coincidence.
Yeah, and we also need to point out that it was September 11th, 1991, when President George H.W. Bush gave the speech about the New World Order.
Correct.
10 years to the day before the Twin Towers were hit. But we don't believe in coincidences here, do we?
I don't believe there is any coincidences.
So we've got bonesman presidents who set the table for major international turmoil and conflict, which is basically what they use to do to grab more power and resources.
Correct.
Very common theme. Okay, well, you're also going to want to have some senators. We've had 19 of them from Skull and Bones.
Out of a class of 15 per year.
Yeah.
What are the odds?
Pretty extreme. So the first one we have was a William M. Evarts. And we talked about him a lot a bit. He was also the U.S. Secretary of the State from 1877 to 1881. He was in the Senate from 1885 to 1891 after he was Secretary of the State. He's a senator from New York. We've talked about Evarts a little bit before. Let me see if I've got anything good on him. I'm navigating a bunch of screens, so.
We'll be patient.
Oh, yeah. He happened to be the grandson of one of the founding fathers, Roger Sherman, who was a signatory to the Continental Association, the Declaration of Independence, the Articles of Confederation, and the U.S. Constitution. And it was Sherman who came up with a compromise that gave us the former version of a Senate appointed by the state legislatures and a House of Representatives popularly voted in by the people. Evarts also was a guy who represented the estate of the famous Astor family. He, what else do we have? He's famous for the prizes cases. And his son was also a bonesman, Maxwell Evarts, who would be a bonesman in 1884. His son was actually the guy who represented Wong Kim Ark in the famous lawsuit that basically is going to be fought this fall over birthright citizenship. So that's kind of an interesting coincidence. Next one we have is a senator by the name of Horace Sanford Ferry, in office from 1867 to 1875 from Connecticut. A lot of Connecticut connections. A lot of senators from Connecticut. He was also a U.S. Brigadier General, which we'll get to when we start talking to the military stuff. Our next bonesman senator was a William Barrett Washburn, senator from Massachusetts, 1874 to 1875, and was also the Massachusetts governor. We would have a Richard Taylor, who was a member of the Louisiana State Senate, and he was a Confederate general fought against the Union. One of the very few Southerners in the early Bonesmen. Next one's one we talked about before, a guy named Chauncey Depew. He was a U.S. Senator from 1899 to 1911. Made his bones as a Vanderbilt Railroad lawyer. You're going to see a lot of railroad connections, and you're going to see a lot of Vanderbilt and other family connections. It's funny. I was listening to a video, someone else doing something on Skull and Bones last week, and the guy comes out. I always call them bonesmen. He always calls them skull and boners. I'm thinking about adapting that. Okay, so see how that sounds. The next skull and boner who became a U.S. Senator from Delaware was an Anthony C. Higgins, and he was in office from 1889 to 1895. A lot of these guys are there in the 1880s and 90s. Now, why is that so important? This is the period of time where America is spreading its wings and getting ready to become an imperial power. The robber barons have conquered the United States, and they need more territories to exploit. This is a time period where we started war as a racket. General Smedley Butler was just getting started, and we were doing these, using the military covertly to create the banana republics, build canals. We're preparing to annex Hawaii in 1898. And these guys are all in office setting the groundwork for this stuff. So the time periods really matter. Senator after senator, all in the 1880s and 90s. We've got a George Wetmore, the United States Senator from Rhode Island, 1895 to 1907, who would also be a Rhode Island governor. And I told the Colonel that we just booked a trip for 2 weeks from now. We're going to go down to Rhode Island, Newport, for my birthday weekend, and visit all the mansions of the Gilded Age robber barons. So I'll be visiting the Vanderbilts.
I did that a couple of years ago, and I highly recommend it.
Yeah, I'm taking pictures too. We're going all out on this one. We're doing a whole grand tour and everything. But I am looking forward to it. Rhode Island is, we talked about the Rhode Island rats once before. The reason Rhode Island didn't show up, that they're the only one of the 13 colonies that didn't show up for the Philadelphia Convention. That's because Rhode Island was built by smugglers. They had all these, waterways, canals. It was perfect for smuggling. They feared a bigger government. They did not want a government that was capable of cracking down on piracy and smuggling. That's why Rhode Island didn't bother showing up. They only joined the Union to re-sign the Constitution afterwards, when they're going to be surrounded by 12 bigger states. They realized we better join or we're going to get crushed. So that's Rhode Island.
I found it very interesting that of all the places in the Northeast, the Naval War College is in Newport.
Yeah, that's one of the things we may try to visit, or at least get some pictures of. This theme of smuggling and opium has been popping up. A lot of these fortunes were built on opium. We've hit this theme over and over again. But it goes back to the Skull and Bones insignia and how many of these people, were ruled by pirates. It's really what it comes down to.
Well, and I think we may have covered this when we were doing the Bushes, that when you go back in their ancestry, under the Walker branch of it, like 6 generations, he was a privateer. He was a slave trader. He was a ship captain that trafficked in slaves. And he was so evil that his crew mutinied him at sea, and he was never heard from again.
John Hancock, smuggler, one of the richest men in the colonies, one of the founding fathers. It's just over and over and over again we get this theme. And you would see this into the 20th century with Iran-Contra. And the CIA creating everything we talk about in Gladio, everything from Golden Lily, the reason we're in Vietnam, the poppy seed, Afghanistan, you name it. It's over and over and over again the same thing. And yes. My favorite quote on that is, the only difference between a pirate and a privateer is a piece of paper.
Yep.
All right, our next senator, Skull and Boner, is the LeBaron B. Colt. He was in office 1913 to 1924 from Rhode Island again. There's a couple other interesting things about Colt, if I can find them real quick. He'd be a federal judge. Nope, that's all I've got on him. Oops. Told the Colonel I'm navigating multiple screens, so I'm not going to be as efficient as I would normally. Our next senator was a John Patton Jr. Thinks he's Wyatt Earp with that mustache. He's a U.S. senator from Michigan from 1894 to 1895. Very short stint, so there's not much to know about him, but he was a bonesman. The question in the chat is, does Rhode Island have any connections to Cecil Rhodes in name anyway? No, Rhode Island was named before Cecil Rhodes was even born. However, there may be some connection to Cecil B. Rhodes' ancestors. And I think there was an explorer by the name of Rhodes, is why they called it Rhode Island or something like that. I'll get the story for you next time. Next one we have a guy named Frank Brandegee, U.S. Senator from Connecticut again, 1905 to 1924. Interesting time to be in office. So he oversaw the implementation of the Federal Reserve Act, the 17th Amendment, the 16th Amendment, Prohibition, all of the progressive era stuff of the 1910s, World War I, he's there in office. He got to start with interoceanic Calans. I guess that's a shipping company. But he's also involved in Panama and Pacific Railroads. So he hit all those themes that we see over and over again. Next guy we have is a Thomas F. Bayard Jr., Delaware, 1922 to 1929. And he's known for marrying into the DuPont family. Why is that significant? Where have you come across the DuPonts over and over again? United Fruit Company.
In Operation Gladio as well.
Indeed. Okay. Our next, oops. Let me get my navigation back. We have a Franklin Colin Walcott, a senator from Connecticut again, from 1929 to 1935. So Connecticut didn't want to go too long without a skull and boner as their senator. He would later on go on to be a regent of the Smithsonian. That's a big deal when it comes to society, because a lot of these wealthy families in America, they get involved in what they call philanthropic activities. That's really where society is done on a social level. A lot of business deals are done in these philanthropic stuff, and of course we've demonstrated over and over again how under the guise of charity, we've used NGOs and all sorts of other cutouts to perform the dirty work of the CIA and the State Department. And this philanthropic stuff started right around 1910 or so with the Carnegie and Rockefeller foundations.
Isn't he the one that was also in the OSS?
Walcott?
Yeah.
I did not have that in my notes.
Yes. Yeah, it's him. He was the special assistant to OSS Director William Donovan. He was the liaison to the British SOE, which is their version of the OSS.
Okay.
It also says that he was the director of the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development. I knew you were going to like that one.
We'll talk more about the Marshall Plan here in a little bit. All right. Another bonesman, Senator James Wadsworth Jr., member of the House of Representatives from New York, who was also a U.S. Senator from 1915 to 1927. So it's interesting. One of the very few politicians you see go from the Senate to the House. It's usually considered a step down.
Yeah, that's weird.
I think he lost re-election in New York in 27. Um, and then he ended up running for Congress for 18 years. Then, of course, we've got Senator Robert A. Taft. Yes, he's the son of President Taft. Senator from Ohio, from Cincinnati, in office from 1939 to 1953. So, senator during World War II and everything that happened thereafter. So, he would have voted on the National Security Act of 1947.
So can I go back to Wadsworth for just a second?
Yep.
He was the architect of the effort to ratify NATO treaty.
Oh, well, we might have him pop up here later on. So I think I'm going to double up on that. I did have that.
Okay.
So we have Robert A. Taft. We've done the Tafts ad nauseum. And then, of course, there is Prescott Bush, the father of President George H.W. Bush, founder of famous bank Brown Brothers Harriman, who helped finance the Nazis. Bush would also be instrumental in the business plot of 1933 that tried to overthrow FDR, was actually charged with trading with the Enemies Act in World War II, and somehow never saw a day of prison and got his record so clean that his son and grandson were able to become presidents of the United States. That Prescott Bush. And of course, he would marry into the Walker family, and that's how we got George Herbert Walker Bush, as the whole pattern of keeping your maternal patriarch's surname as your middle name. Next one we have is a John Sherman Cooper. He was a Kentucky senator from 56 to 73. He was the assistant to none other than Dean Acheson on NATO, and he was the first U.S. ambassador to East Germany, where he was in office from 1974 to 1976. So remember we said you want to have your people in the chokehold positions of not only the government, but also diplomacy. And we're seeing these senators leak into foreign policy. Our next senator is a James L. Buckley, New York senator from 1971 to 77. His brother was William Buckley, who we disparaged, the guy from the Federalist. The Buckleys are all over the place. He was also a senior judge for the U.S. Court of Appeals from D.C., and we did Buckley's quite a bit, but he ended up being a senator.
Well, and he was the president of the Federalist Society, too.
Yeah. Federalist Society claims to be conservative, but I don't know what they're actually trying to conserve. To me, it's basically old school establishment Republicans.
Neocons.
Yes. Or war pigs.
Yeah.
Then, of course, we had David Boren, Oklahoma senator, 79 to 94, full of scandal. He would end up being the president of the University of Oklahoma. There we are in academia again. Although it is debatable if University of Oklahoma qualifies as academia. All right, everybody, I'm a Texas Longhorn fan. I'm allowed to make that joke.
I think he was CIA, too.
You know what? We may have covered that. Let me see if I have that in the old notes.
Yeah, he is. He was a counterterrorism analyst in the Middle East. Weirdly, right around 9/11.
Yeah, so he was, let's see, David Lyle. That's one we're looking at. He was born in 41. His father was Lyle Borden, who's in the U.S. House for Oklahoma. And his son is Dan Boren, who is a U.S. rep until 2013 in the House. But David here,
he served as the deputy director of Office of Policy and Strategy, which is the dirty works part of. He was a deputy director on the OD&I staff. Almost the full term of Obama.
He's also a Rhodes Scholar.
Well, that doesn't surprise me at all.
Nah. And he was the chairman of the Senate Select Committee of Intelligence from, wait for this, 1987 to 1993, which is when the cover-up from Iran-Contra is going on. And
Correct.
which bank's being investigated at that period of time?
BCCI,
Bingo.
the CIA's favorite money laundering operation.
Yes.
He also fits the perfect example of what I said at the very beginning. He leaves as soon as Trump gets in office and becomes the managing director of Global Risk, which is where you find all of the CIA guys in international businesses, at SRM, which is a private intelligence organization owned by that same global oligarch structure. He then, in 2020, becomes the vice president of global intelligence at Constellus, which is the company that bought Blackwater. He is the very example of what I said at the beginning of the show.
Well, Blackwater's a very reputable firm. I mean, that's all right. Private military contractor. All right, so that's Mr. Bourne. Oh, by the way, he had to swear on the Bible once that he was not gay because there were a lot of accusations with him. Kind of got that Lindsey Graham face too, doesn't he? And then, of course, our last senator that we know of, Mr. John Forbes Kerry, former Secretary of State, Massachusetts Senator for 18 years from 1985 to 2013. Former presidential candidate, ran against fellow bonesman George Bush, which is almost impossible. Two guys from the same organization running for the most powerful position in the world. The bonesman couldn't lose one way or the other. And currently one of the world's biggest liars and spokesmen about the climate change hoax.
Correct. Which also, is just a money laundering operation.
And of course, John Kerry went to high school with a classmate he played lacrosse with by the name of Bob Mueller.
Yes.
And Kerry also came across our radar when we talked about BCCI, which Mueller was supposed to be investigating. There's a lot more on Kerry, but we hit it earlier. So, all right. So those are all the senators. It's quite a bit.
I do want to say, I think this is an excellent way to do the summary, so kudos to you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. We've got 33 congressmen. I didn't want to put them all in a Miro board. It would have taken a while. I can run down a list real quick.
Sure.
Last names only. You had Hubbard Tweedy from Wisconsin, Henry Washington from North Carolina, Seeley from New York, Deming, Connecticut, Owen from Georgia, Perkins Jr. from Louisiana, Berry from Mississippi, Peters from Maine, Eames from Rhode Island, Roswell Hart from New York, Esty, Massachusetts, Kellogg, Connecticut, Brandegie from Connecticut, who we just mentioned, Henry Roberts, New York, Haldeman from Pennsylvania, Crapo from Massachusetts. We know that story. Henry Davis from Missouri, Phelps from New Jersey, Hedge from Iowa, Sweet from Michigan, Fowler, New Jersey, Kent from California, first one of those, Stewart of New Jersey, Husted from New York, Harrison from New York, McGee of Pennsylvania, Simpson of New York, Baldrige of Nebraska, Voris from Ohio, Bingham from New York, and Moorhead from Pennsylvania, and finally Ashley from Ohio. There's some interesting stories in there, but we're not going to go into them. The bottom line is 33 is an awful lot of Congress critters. So then we get to the State Department. And of course, we had William Evarts, who we mentioned before, grandson of Roger Sherman, former senator. And he was the Secretary of State from 1877 to 1881. Next we have is one of our favorite characters, none other than Henry Stimson, who was the United States Secretary of War as well as Secretary of State during World War II. He was the Secretary of State previously from 1929 to 1933, and he was the Governor General of the Philippines from 1927 to 1929.
And that's huge.
Yeah, the Philippines is one of those hot spots that the bonesmen seem to show up on quite a bit. Why is that? Well, it goes back to the Spanish-American War of 1898. We had bonesmen in there before, during, and after.
And because it was the launching pad into taking over the resources in Asia.
Yeah, and Stimson is all over the creation and founding of the CIA, Gladio, all that stuff. I mean, we've hit him. I mean, you've hit him on your own shows. We've hit him quite a bit here. Stimson is one of the heroes of the story. Our next Secretary of State, by the way, Secretary of State's a big deal. There's been 57 Secretaries of State in history, and 6 of them were bonesmen. Another one of our favorite names is Harvey Hollister Bundy. Well, bear with me. Harvey Hollister Bundy is from the famous bonesman Bundy family. Born in Grand Rapids, Michigan. He's the Assistant Secretary of State from 1931 to 33, and he's lifelong friends with Henry Stimson, who would become the chairman of the Carnegie Endowment for International War, and he succeeded John Foster Dulles in that position.
Of course he did.
Yeah, they really need to keep that stuff really close-knit. Then, of course, the last we've got... Oops, yeah. We've got W. Averill Harrington, one of the richest men in the world. Father was a robber baron, railroad guy. I've got a lot more on Harriman I want to touch on, so let me scroll down here. Oops, that's not what I want. And again, namesake for Brown Brothers Harriman. He was Roosevelt's personal envoy to both Churchill and Stalin in World War II.
And keep in mind that he is the one that withheld so much of the information from the Soviet Union as our ally during World War II.
Very much so. He was also the U.S. ambassador to the USSR until 1946.
So the guy that was basically setting up the Soviet Union for the aftermath of World War II goes on to become the ambassador there to continue hiding information from them.
Exactly. And then in 1948, they put him in charge of the Marshall Plan,
which was the precursor funding mechanism for Operation Gladio.
Without a doubt. And when he's there, he becomes really good friends with a CIA guy by the name of Irving Brown, who I'm sure you run into many times.
Yeah.
Irving Brown was known for organizing anti-communist unions.
Like the World Anti-Communist League, the ABN, all of those.
Yeah. Well, Harriman's not done yet. He goes to Iran in 1951 to mediate the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company nationalization. How'd that work out?
That worked out. Jinx, you owe me a Coke. It worked out so that they overthrew Mossadegh.
2 years later?
Yeah.
He's not done yet. He then became the ambassador at large for JFK, which means basically a guy with no portfolio, but every place was his business. He advised on Laos, and how'd that work out?
Got a lot of opium out of there.
He helped negotiate the Limited Nuclear Test Ban Treaty in 1963. He was one of Kennedy's closest confidants during the Bay of Pigs, and he's the guy who advised JFK to give Khrushchev a dignified way to back down. He would be accused of spying for the Soviet Union by Russian defector Anatoly Golitsyn, but that was brushed under the rug, so apparently that never happened. It was a non-event. Maybe. And of course, he was the point man for Vietnam and supported the coup against Ngo Dinh Diem in 1963, which set off the whole Vietnam conflict. So that's W. Averill Harriman. Good life. And he was Secretary of State, or Undersecretary, for Political Affairs from 63 to 65, but obviously he was a lot more than his title. Our next guy is a Stanley Woodward. We'll get to a little bit more with him later. I put him in here because he's the 7th chief of protocol from 1944 to 1950. Can you guess what the chief of protocol does for the State Department?
Well, I know what they do.
Yeah, it's like the number 2, 3 guy in the State Department, and he basically advises presidents and diplomats on basically how to behave.
Yeah, so protocol, just so that everybody understands, I did protocol when I was deployed because you have lots of the congressmen called Codels that want to come into the theater and be escorted around so they can say that they went and saw, what was going on. And you really are a form of a gatekeeper. You sit people at the table. There's approved diagrams of where everybody sits for strategic region. I had to have a special table made in northern Iraq for General Powell to come visit because he wanted a coffin-shaped one that bowed out and then back in so he could see everybody's face. It is a very big deal being the protocol officer.
And we'll talk more about Woodward in a second. We had Winston.
Well, I should add this too. It's the perfect position for intelligence because you know every single little detail about the people coming in. Like I know that General Powell's favorite drink was Diet Coke. You get to know all of the intimate. You put together a book on the people that are coming to brief the general. So you know all of the intimate details of people coming.
Yeah, look at the period he's doing it to. It's 1944 to 1950. What's going on right then? The end of World War II, the creation of the IMF, the World Bank, the CIA, setting up of Operation Gladio events.
Yes.
Basically, the architecture of the entire Cold War is happening right there.
Correct.
And he's one of the gatekeepers.
Correct.
And he's a bonesman.
Yes.
Because, of course, he is. Next guy we have is Winston Lord. We've talked about the Lord family. It's one of the oldest families in America. Winston was the Assistant Secretary of State for East Asian and Pacific Affairs from 93 to 97. He was the Assistant Secretary of State from 93 to 97. Council of Foreign Relations Chair, 1977 to 85. And the Ambassador to China, 85 to 89.
And what were we doing in 77 to 85 while he was at the CFR writing all of the papers to justify all of the stuff we were doing?
Minding our own business? Oh.
Not even a chance because, of course, up to 85 covers basically the entire first half of the Reagan administration, which is when we were going into Angola, arranging the arms deal with Iran, the running of drugs, supporting the Contras, all of that stuff was going on.
Yeah, he was also descendant of Oswald Bates Lord, who basically would sell his company into Burlington Industries. His mother was a Pillsbury, from the Pillsbury family. He went to high school at the Buckley School, went to Tufts University, which of course has that famous exchange program with the Israeli Defense Force. We talked about that, some of the other Tufts universities. Guys, everyone from Daniel Moynihan to Jamie Dimon, Scaramucci, Dan Crenshaw, Pickering. Well, Lord was a huge part of restoring relations between the U.S. and China. He was in every single meeting between Nixon, Ford, Kissinger, and Mao Zedong. He was in the room when Henry Kissinger opened up China to the West. He was with Kissinger for every meeting with North of Vietnam from 70 to 73.
He also was involved with North Korea, I believe.
Yeah, that's, let's see, do I have that? Yeah, I got that later on. Actually, currently he's the director of the U.S. Committee for Human Rights in North Korea, so he's still involved. The China part's really important because it's 71 when Kissinger opens that up. The real gatekeeper to China after that was George H.W. Bush. And the Bush family, if the business wanted to do business in China, you had to go through the Bushes. Once again, skull and bones connection. And Winston Lord is there paving the way. He became the ambassador to China, 85-89 under Reagan. Assistant Secretary of State for East Asian Affairs under Clinton. So he crossed the political aisle. He's the chairman of the National Endowment for Democracy.
Because of course he is.
Uh-huh.
Going to fund those coups.
And of course he was the chairman of the Carnegie Endowment National Commission on America and the New World Order, they should call it.
World Order. They left out a word.
Yeah. He's also a trustee of the Trilateral Commission, a former member of the steering committee of the Bilderberg Group. He's an Aspen Institute Distinguished Fellow. Is there anything checkmark this Winston Lord didn't check?
Nope.
And of course, he signed a letter saying Trump was unfit for another term in 2020.
Well, for them, he was definitely unfit.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, and look, another familiar face.
Oh, John Kerry, who we talked about ad nauseum. Okay. But it's one thing to be the Secretary of State. The diplomatic head of America in every single country, of course, is the U.S. ambassador. Half of our embassies are staffed with people that are under Department of State cover, and they're actually CIA.
I would put that at over half, but go ahead.
I'm trying to be generous here. So let's start going through some of these U.S. ambassadors and talking about their stories. We've had 18 U.S. ambassadors who are skull and bones. So what I'm describing here is the ultimate insiders club. You've got to be in the know to be a U.S. ambassador. And of course, who names the U.S. ambassador? The President of the United States. They're going to be their friends, their business acquaintances, or their fellow skull and boners. So we've got Alphonso Taft, one of the founders. He was the U.S. Minister to Russia from September 1884 to July of 1885, appointed by Chester Arthur, and was also the U.S. Minister to Austria-Hungary in 1882 to 1884. So I decided to have some fun going through these ambassadors. And what I did is I went to ChatGPT. You should be able to see that now, shouldn't you?
I'm still seeing the pictures of the people.
Okay, then let me stop the share and I'll pull up the new one. There we go.
Okay.
So what I just did is I asked ChatGPT, what were the major events in Russia from 1883 to 1886 when this guy was the ambassador? Every single one. I'm going to ask
the word assassination. Go ahead. I can recognize that word now from a mile away.
Between 1883 and 1886, Russia underwent significant political, cultural, and social developments under Tsar Alexander III after the assassination of his father. What you're going to see when I ask this query about every country, these bonesmen are ambassadors, and every single time ChatGPT is going to say, if that was a period of upheaval, while our bonesmen ambassadors are there. I'm going to do this like 20 times, so just get ready for it.
So this was Gladio before Gladio.
Yeah, the State Department, the State Department has always been controlled by our deep state. Our foreign policy has always been enacted for the multinational corporations so they can exploit the resources.
Correct. And that was driven home clearly when we were talking the other day about the Carnegie Endowment for War. And like in their second meeting, the statement was made that if you control the State Department, which is the ambassadors, you control the world.
Very much so. Let's keep it on the pictures, and I'll just read ChatGPT. But I just wanted to show you what that looked like. So a little bit more on Mr. Taft, I think I have. Oh, so what was going on in Austria-Hungary at the time? Well, while he's there, they're making alliances with Serbia, and they signed the famous Triple Alliance with Germany and Italy. Now, mind you, this is in the 1880s. 20 years later, or 30 years later, World War I breaks out because of those alliances. And Taft is the guy who was there crafting it. Then it gets to Russia, where the rise of authoritarianism happens. Big crackdown on dissenters. And Jewish immigration was happening while Taft is there. Basically, a lot of the Russian Jews didn't like the way they're being treated, and they started migrating to Europe. That's when that happened, while Taft is the ambassador. Okay, our next one is a John Thomas Croxton. He's the U.S. ambassador to Bolivia from 1873 to 1874. And real quick, let's just see what we have to say about Bolivia. ChatGPT. What were the major events in Bolivia from 1872 to 1875? ChatGPT says, Bolivia underwent major political instability, marked by military coups, assassinations, and early tensions over border disputes that would later spark the War of the Pacific.
There you go.
Getting a pattern here yet?
Yes, and we're only through two of them.
Yeah, and this is when Croxton helped negotiate an alliance with Peru to fight the War of the Pacific against Chile after the assassination of President Morales in 1872. So that's John Thomas Croxton, Bonesman. Our next one, of course, is a gentleman by the name of Eugene Schuler. I guess it's spelled. And he's the U.S. consul to Egypt in 1890. Want to see what ChatGPT has to say about Egypt? Did I skip that one? I might have skipped Egypt. I've got some notes on it. I didn't skip it because he's went more than one place. So, first place he is in Romania. He's the U.S. General Consul of Romania from 1880 to 84. ChatGPT, what's the major events in Romania from 80 to 84? Romania experienced a transformative period that solidified its independence, modernized its institutions. This is also when Romania got its independence from the Ottomans after the Russo-Turkish War. And Schuyler's there. He's also in Serbia as the U.S. minister from 1882 to 1884. ChatGPT. What were the major events in Serbia? Serbia experienced a pivotal period of state building. Again and again. So in 1882, while Schuyler's the minister there, that's when they had the proclamation of the Kingdom of Serbia, which was supported by and allied with Austria-Hungary. And that would lead to the Serbia-Bulgaria War of 1885, right after he left. Then, of course, he goes to Greece from 83 to 84, so he had a big portfolio, several countries at a time. ChatGPT. Here's the breakdown of major events in Greece from 83 to 85, and Egypt, because I asked both, which is where he'd go next. So Greece went from a constitutional monarchy. What do I have here on Greece? They did a bunch of economic modernization and a lot of tension with the Ottomans. They would actually end up having a war with the Ottomans a little bit later. Then he goes to Egypt in 1889 to 1890. Kind of important. During this time, Egypt was nominally an Ottoman province, but had become a de facto British protectorate after British occupation in 1882. This is about the Convention of Constantinople, which declared the Suez Canal open to all ships of all nations in war and peace. And that was one of the major causes of World War I, was the Suez Canal. And this guy's there. It's also important to point out that he was the consul general in Egypt in 1899 when the Mahdi's tried to invade Egypt. The Mahdi's were a radical Islamic sect. Very violent period of time. So that's Schuyler. He was there for all that. Pattern yet?
Yep.
Okay. Next guy we have is Bonesman Ibn Alexander. And he would be the ambassador to Romania from 1893 to 97. Well, let's see if ChatGPT is interested in that. Major events in Romania from that time period. Romania navigated a period of political transition. Basically, the National Liberal Party lost power to the Conservative Party, and they went from a populist to an aristocratic government. It would last quite a while in Romania. He's also at the same time.
By aristocratic, you mean a dictatorship?
To some degree, yeah. Yeah, and
Yeah.
Alexander's ushering that in. At the same time, he's also the ambassador to, once again, Greece. 10 years later, after a fellow bonesman was in Greece. Okay. 1893, Greece has a national bankruptcy. The government falls and is replaced by a guy named Deligiannis, who's a nationalist, anti-Ottoman, bit of a dictator. This leads in 1897 to the Greco-Turkish War, also known as the 30 Days War. Big fight over Crete, where most of the people living there were Greek, but the Ottomans held sway. That, of course, 30-Day War, the Ottomans kicked the ass of Greece, and Greece had to pay reparations. But Crete got granted autonomy under international oversight. And the other neat thing that happened while he was ambassador is we had the first modern Olympic Games in Athens in 1896, which is
oversaw by a bonesman.
How are we doing on time? I gotta pick up the pace a little bit. Then our good friend W. Averill Harriman, who we talked about previously. Then we get to our friend Stanley Woodward. A little bit more detail. He was the ambassador to Canada from 1950 to 1953. Why is that significant? Because that's when Canada joins NATO and starts moving towards autonomous rule away from England. Stanley Woodward is there for that. And a little footnote, he's the treasurer of the Democratic National Committee. Next guy we get to is a James Jeremiah Wadsworth. Bear with me.
Yep.
Oh, he's the ambassador to the United Nations in 1960 and 61. Now, why is that important?
Yikes.
Yeah. Kind of an interesting year to be the United Nations ambassador, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Next guy is one we covered previously, Barry Zorthian. Zorthian was the press officer for Saigon. Basically, he was the Baghdad Bob of the Vietnam War. He's also the co-founder and director of Voice of America,
which is CIA.
Yeah, mouthpiece of the CIA. We did a whole thing on Zorthian. He's pretty interesting. He's, I believe, Armenian-born, or let me pull up a little more on Zorthian.
I see that it says he's the executive at Time, which is also a mouthpiece of the CIA.
Well, exactly. That's where when he'd leave government, he would go do that.
Yeah.
He's born in Turkey, grew up in New Haven, Connecticut. He's the co-author of the Voice of America's charter, and would later be the program director. And of course, he's always known for what's called the 5 o'clock follies. The quote was, his problem is he was trying to sell a bad war. He was a media advisor to 3 U.S. ambassadors to South Vietnam, including Henry Cabot Lodge Jr. and General Westmoreland. What else did he do? After Vietnam, he would become an executive at Time. Pentagon Papers comes out in 71, and Zorthian gets raked under the coal. He had called the war the most open war in history. We know that's a lie.
Well, I think it's important to note also that being from Turkey, Turkey housed the largest single country of Gladio operators under their werewolf organization.
Yeah, very much so. And remember, Turkey's also the Ottoman Empire that we've just got done talking about. Our bonesmen, secretaries of state or ambassadors helped overthrow or led into World War One.
Yeah.
A couple other things by Zorthian, because he's fun. 91, he has a famous quote, "The Gulf War is over and the press, meaning the media, lost." Okay. He's also the president of Public Diplomacy Foundation, where he has been a consultant that helped participate in a review of the history of the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act of 2013, which basically allows propaganda on American citizens by the government. That's Mr. Zorthian.
That's Mr. CIA.
Yes. So our next guy who we talked about before is Charles Whitehouse. His son is Senator Whitehouse. He was the U.S. ambassador to Thailand in 1975 to 1978.
What was happening then?
Well, let's see what ChatGPT says about that. Give me 1 second. I got to scroll a bit. I got past Canada. There's Laos. But I want Thailand.
So let me just tell everybody while you're looking for that. In Thailand during this time from 75, as the Vietnam War is winding down, Thailand was the pivot point for the opium running. We spent the CIA did $35 million to buy off and by the way, we trained the entire Thailand National Police under USAID's Office of Public Safety. So they are all trained in torture and kidnapping any dissident. We spent $35 million to buy off the National Police guy that we put in charge to open all of their sea and airports to drug trafficking. Yeah. Thailand was pivotal to everything.
Yeah, they had a military coup in 76 that he was there for. And that's something called the Thammasat University Massacre. A bunch of students got killed by the people the colonel just described.
Yeah.
And they flip over that military coup. They had a bloodless coup of 1977 where they ousted Thanon and returned to quote-unquote democracy. ChatGPT. What are the major events in Thailand from 75 to 78? It says Thailand experienced a period of intense political volatility. Every single time.
Yep.
And of course, he was in Laos before that. So what was going on in Laos?
Of course, is where we were running the drugs from.
Yeah, from 73 to 75, which of course Laos would fall to communism. And Whitehouse was there. ChatGPT, what was going on in Laos? Laos underwent a dramatic political transformation.
Well, and I would argue the people that they were calling communists were really nationalists that wanted the U.S. CIA out of their country.
Yeah, I think that's one of the, when it comes to the Far East, the East Asian. I think it's one of those. There's a little bit of both.
Yeah,
you do have the populist nationalist movement. That can be anywhere along the political spectrum from far left to far right. I mean, communist versus, anarchist, what have you. But bottom line is, anytime there's a populist in there, our CIA is going to want to take them down because they don't really take too kindly to our diplomatic efforts to exploit their resources.
Correct. And in this case, it was opium.
Okay. Sheldon Whitehouse's dad. Sheldon is a clown. Next guy we have is Bill Draper, who we talked about previously because he was the chairman of the U.S. Export-Import Bank from 81 to 86, and he's now currently an advisor for the Stanford Graduate School of Business. Why is that significant?
One of the CIA's favorite recruiting places and to do experiments.
Very much so. Draper's also was the administrator of the United Nations Development Program from 1986 to 1993.
Which is basically the UN's version of USAID.
Very, very much so. That's William Draper III. We did a blurb on him many months ago.
Yep.
Okay. Now we get to Evan G. Galbraith. Well, another one we've talked about a little bit. Let me scroll it. Let me zoom in a little bit for him. There's him with Ronald Reagan. And he is the U.S. ambassador to France from 1981 to 1985. Why does that matter? ChatGPT says France experienced a period of major political transformation. More specifically, Galbraith had gone to Harvard Law. He was formerly in the CIA. Oh, wait, can you be a former CIA person?
No.
No, you cannot. He'd go on to become the Assistant Secretary of Commerce under Eisenhower, and he's a classmate and friends with William Buckley. Becomes the ambassador.
He was in the CIA.
Mm-hmm. He was the ambassador to France in 80 to 85. It's a tumultuous period in France. They've just gotten, the de Gaulle period is ending. Mitterrand's government's coming in, bringing these socialist reforms. There's a huge rise in domestic terrorism. Mitterrand would then end up flip-flopping on his socialist reforms, and France has been a basket case ever since. Galbraith was there.
Operation Gladio.
What did I just describe?
Yeah.
And the Galbraith's right there. Skull and bones. CIA. Harvard Law. Checks all the boxes.
Yep.
Okay. Then we have an ambassador by the name of George Herbert Walker III. Is that name familiar?
Little bit.
United States ambassador to Hungary from 2003 to 2006. Who was the president during those years? Skull and Bones.
Brother.
George W. Bush. His cousin.
Sorry.
Yeah. Wonder if anything's going on in Hungary. Give me 1 second. ChatGPT. What do you think it's going to say?
A period of unrest.
Hungary underwent a crucial period of political change, economic reform, and international realignment, most notably marked by its accession to the European Union in 2004.
There you go.
Hungary,
and there's a blueprint to usher them in.
And Hungary had just joined NATO in 1999, right before we got there.
Yeah.
So here we are in 2003-06, and Hungary is going through economic turmoil. It is very difficult to integrate into the EU when you're a poorer country because of the fixed exchange rate. It takes a long time to compete. The prime minister's guy, György Szkany, I think I pronounced that right. Hungarian's not my first language. He was speaking at a retreat to a bunch of socialist members of parliament about the economy, and he tells them, in quotes, "We lied in the morning, we lied in the evening. It was absolutely clear that what we were saying was not true." This gets leaked to the public, and the prime minister didn't last much longer than that. The good news about that is that's what ushered in Viktor Orban and his party as a result of that. And I personally think Orban is one of the better European leaders we have.
I agree.
That's George Herbert Walker III, named after the famous Walker family. And I probably talked about this earlier. The Walker family compound is just right up the road from me in Maine, and I've visited it. And it is, I can't really get to it because it's gated off, but I took a few pictures. And some of the other Bushes and Walker houses in that area of Maine, you can see. And anybody who thinks George W. Bush was a Texan, well,
you're crazy.
Yeah, I got a few bridges to sell you. Okay. Our next character is Winston Lord, who we talked about, the Undersecretary of State for East Asian and Pacific Affairs. Do I have any more notes on him today? Oh, yeah, he's over in China.
Right.
So real quick, I had another blurb on that.
Well, in the 90s is obviously when Clinton was in office, and that's when we're selling them illegally all of our missile technology.
Yeah. Okay. We've already done Winston Lord. We'll leave him alone. Next guy we have is very fun by the name of Shattuck, John Shattuck. He was the 6th Assistant Secretary of State for Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor.
Which means exploit, get away with or do away with democracy, exploit human rights, and suppress any labor movements.
Yep. And of course, after college, Skull and Bones, he joins the ACLU, and then would go on to become the ambassador to the Czech Republic in 1998 to 2000. Think anything was going on in the Czech Republic right around then?
Yeah.
Well, let's see. According to ChatGPT, between 98 and 2000, the Czech Republic underwent a period of political transition, economic stability, blah, blah, blah. They're basically joining NATO.
Yep.
They joined NATO in 1999. Then, of course, you get the Kosovo War in 1999. And they began their talks of integrating with the European Union. These are the dominoes that NATO is collecting from former Soviet bloc countries, getting closer and closer to the doorsteps of Russia, which led directly to the Ukraine conflict.
Correct.
And these are Skull and Bonesmen that are the ambassadors making this happen.
Doing the work. Yep.
Kind of fits a pattern, doesn't it?
It does.
Next guy we have is David Thorne, who we featured a little bit before. I want to go into him again. He would become the ambassador to Italy in 2009 to 2013. Let me see if I can find that real quick. Yeah, David Hoadley Thorne. He had lived in Italy for a decade while his father helped administer the Marshall Plan.
Set up Operation Gladio.
Yes, and he just happened to have a grandfather who was in Skull and Bones by the name of Henry Stimson. Let's see, what do we have? He got his master's in journalism from Columbia, 1971. He was in the U.S. Navy during Vietnam, 66 to 70. Served with John Kerry. John Kerry would marry his sister, Julia Thorne, before he married into the Hines family. He was a political consultant who worked on John Kerry's first congressional campaign in 72 and helped Joe Biden win his first U.S. Senate campaign in 72. He knew Italy because his father ran the Italian branch of Das Trust, which is a real estate developer. In 2013 to 2017, he became John Kerry's senior advisor when he was Secretary of State. And his focus was on integrating economic and commercial issues into U.S. foreign policy. He is a member of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and a member of the American Ditchley Foundation, which we've talked about.
Yeah, so that just translates into exploitation.
Yeah. David Thorne for you. All right, we got a few more. We have a Victor Henderson Ashe II. And he was a member of the Broadcasting Board of Governors from 2010 to 13, among other things. But, oops, let me get up here. He was the ambassador of Poland from 2004 to 2009. What's going on in Poland during those years? Oops, I skipped over Italy, but that was the fall of Silvio Berlusconi when Thorne was there. And, okay, Poland. Poland underwent transformative political, economic, and social changes while a Bowman. Yeah, every single time. Real big events. They joined the EU in 2004, another domino. The rise of the Conservative Law and Justice Party, which is actually probably good for their politics. and they did a really good job of avoiding the 2008 recession. But that's when our friend was there. So that's Victor Henderson Ashe. I don't have a whole lot on him. He wasn't all that exciting. Then, of course, we have Roy L. Austin. First black guy we've had.
Yeah.
15th U.S. ambassador to Trinidad and Tobago from 2001 to 2009. What do you think's going on in Trinidad and Tobago during those time periods? By the way, who's the president?
Instability. Bush is the president.
Yes. So, ChatGPT says, "You want to get and fill? You want to finish the sentence for me?" Experienced dynamic and often contentious period marked by political instability, rising energy wealth, growing crime, and constitutional tensions. While the Bonesman is there. We've also got sharp rise in violent crime and gang activity. They had a big oil and gas boom, apparently. Offshore, I believe.
Oh, we're going to exploit them.
That's your boy Roy L. Austin, another Skull and Bonesman buddies with George Bush. Okay. I think we're just about through this. We are. The last one. Robert McCallum Jr., United States Ambassador to Australia from 2006 to 2009. Notice how Bush's ambassadors, a lot of them were Bonesmen?
I see that.
Uh-huh. So once again, we just find out what's going on in Australia that makes that so interesting. First of all, this guy knew nothing about Australia. Between 2006 and 2009, Australia experienced pivotal changes in political leadership, environmental policy, blah, 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 and its global diplomatic role. The big issue going on here, first of all, McCallum's a Rhodes Scholar. Got to mention that. The prior Australian government refused to sign on to the Kyoto Accords. They did not believe in climate change. The huge change in political leadership were a bunch of globalist pro-climate change. Same kind of people might be, give you really strict COVID lockdowns. That's what happened while McCallum was there. That shift from a conservative to a globalist government of Australia, which they still are stuck under to this day. But those are our bonesmen. That's just through the U.S. ambassadors and State Department. We haven't even talked about the military, the intelligence, a lot of the other government institutions, or the corporate and institutional connections of Skull and Bones. But if we take a step back here, that's quite a bit, just in the foreign policy and the U.S. domestic policy front, from one small organization at Yale University.
One secret society.
Yeah, very much so. That's probably good for today.
I agree.
We're doing the same exercise, hitting those other areas, but you're going to see the same patterns over and over and over again. What do we say at the beginning? If you're going to set up kind of a shadow government, global government, a new world order, what have you, would you be doing it would you do anything different than what these people have been doing?
No.
You have any closing thoughts on today?
No. Again, kudos to the way you presented that, because I think it provides the perfect overview and context by grouping them in those categories so that people can see this shadow government.
And it goes back more than a century. I mean, yes. It's almost like that was the plan from the beginning. Is we're going to get the secret society, we're going to infiltrate everything. We're going to, bring in all the people from the old money and new money American families, run them through these private grooming high schools, put them into Yale secret societies. If they measure up, then off they go.
Absolutely.
And the rest is history. And people ask, who really runs the world? I don't know how you argue. A bunch of Puritan blue blood Yankees. That's who it is. And we'll demonstrate that. We're going to try to get the grand finale part 2 tomorrow. I'll confirm that I'm available probably about an hour before. I think I should be able to make it. If not, we'll have to, we'll work our schedules out. But as of right now, we're planning on same time tomorrow.
Noon tomorrow for part 2 of the summary of Operation Gladio meets Secret Society Skull and Bones.
Yeah, and I'm going to finish it up with a really fun poem. So you're going to want to look forward to that.
Okay. So thank you guys for joining us and being here and learning along with us. I really appreciate all of the support that you guys have provided and for all the hard work that Brady's put into bringing us this information.
Yeah, the audience was great today. I was reading the chat throughout the whole time. You guys are actually getting a little bit too active. I can't keep up all the time, but no, it's a great chat. And thanks everyone for watching and all the kind words. And this has been a lot of fun so far. And we got a lot more to cover once we get done with Skull and Bones. So,
yes, we do.
I mean, my mind is just full of which direction we're going to jump next and then next. But I went back and rewatched our first 2 episodes of this, and you made the promise that we will do Richie Boys. So that'll come soon.
Well, I have a secret resource for Richie Boys too. The guy that wrote the book is a friend of mine.
Yeah, you mentioned him on the show last episode 1 or 2 that we did of Secret Societies. You mentioned him, and I think I have the book now. And so we'll be giving him a lot of credit that day. So
yes.
All right, everybody. Cheers.
Hopefully we'll see you tomorrow at noon. And if not, we will finish this up next week sometimes. Thanks for joining us.
Cheers, everyone.